Good morning, everyone. I like what the song leader mentioned earlier with the statement saying, we do not only celebrate love on the 14th of February, but we celebrate love every day. And the reason for that is, as we experience our God every day, we just find out that His love is overflowing in our lives every day. Regardless of how we respond to Him, our God is love, and He is really filled with that love that we experience in every minute of the day in our lives. And so with that, we would continue talking about the issues of love, not only because we are in the month of February, but we would like to tackle about this subject matter because this is something that we go through every day as far as we are living in the eyes of our loving God. Last Sunday, we learned about love pays the price, right? That our God, out of His grace and mercy, we who are guilty, we ought to receive the punishment, and yet He got it from us and took the punishment for Himself, because in that way He can pay the price for the sins that we have committed. Love pays the price. And then in relation to that, after God has paid the price that we ought to pay, supposedly, He did not only desire that we experience that love that He is giving to us, but He desires that that love He has for us would also compel us to live our lives in a straight way, not in a crooked way. That is why we entitled this message this morning, Love Straightens the Crooked. Last week, our message was entitled, Love Pays the Price, and today, Love Straightens the Crooked. Last week's message is really dealing about justification. Now, in this sense, within this perspective, we will be dealing this subject matter within the boundary of sanctification this morning. God desires that those who received His love, those who became recipients of that love that He gave to us as a payment to our sins, He desires that we would also live our lives in a straight way, not in a crooked way. And let us open our Bibles in the book of Philippians chapter 2, verses 12 to 13. Philippians 2, 12 to 13. I'll read from the NASB. It says here, So then, my beloved, just as you have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, work out your salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who is at work in you, both to will and to work for His good pleasure. Let us also read 1 Corinthians chapter 13. 1 Corinthians 13, verse 4 to 7. It says here, love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. God bless His words. Earlier, I asked someone, a parent, and I told the person, do you have a son or a daughter? And he responded that I have a daughter. And then after which, I asked the person, do you have something in mind as to how do you want him or her to live her life in the future? And the response of that person is that I want her to serve the Lord. I want her to serve the Lord. And in line of that, every parent on this earth, I believe, has a desire for their children. I have a child also. My eldest is 5-year-old. But if I'm going to be given the chance to look forward 25 or 30 years later, and if you're going to ask me, how do you want your daughter to live her life in the future? And I want her serving the Lord too. Okay? So may it be in relation to career or moral aspect or even statutes in life, there is a picture in every parent's mind as to how they want to see their children in the future. Okay, that's a reality. And then in relation to that picture that you have in mind about your children, how they would become, you are now living in the present. And that future is still very, very far. And according to a Visayan cliche, daghan pa nagkanon nga sakong, pila ka sakong bugas pa'y kaunon until that child of yours reaches that stage. But as you look forward to that future, you are in the present. It would take years for that child of yours to become what you want her to be, or in that status where you desire for her to be in. While you are here in the present, what are you gonna do? Of course, you lead your child so that he or she would walk on the path that would lead her to that picture that you are desiring for her to have. Are you following me? So if you want your children to live their lives in a righteous sense, and if you want your children to still continue believing in the faith in Jesus Christ 30 years later, what are you doing now? And maybe you would say, Pastor, I am bringing her to church. I want them to attend the Sunday school services. I want them to learn from the Word of God. Definitely, that's very good. Why? Because that's what you see in the future. I want my kids, I want my children to keep on believing on Jesus. That's why I'm doing this right now. Okay? So, the future that we desire dictates now how we celebrate, how we live, how we do the living in the current day. Now, I want us to look back at the text because the text says something similar to that as I observe how Paul treated the church in Philippi. This is what he said. So then, my beloved, okay, take note of the word beloved. It tells us that the writer loves the recipients of the letter. Paul loved the church. Okay? That's why he called them my beloved. And I found out as I studied the text, I realized that Paul used this term, beloved, only to those individuals whom he shared the gospel. I mean, those individuals who came to know the Lord through his ministry. Okay? So for example, ako si Paul, and then I was sharing the gospel to this congregation, and you came to know Jesus Christ because of that preaching of the gospel. Then I went away because you came to know the Lord through my preaching. Then I call you my beloved. So I noticed that in those other letters, Paul used the same sense once the recipients of the letter are those individuals who came to know the Lord through his ministry. In other words, there is a sense of connection between the recipients of the letter and Paul. And what is that connection? There is a sense of spiritual fatherhood in relation to the church in Philippi. So Paul, when he looks at the church at Philippi, he sees the congregation as his spiritual children. That is why I'm going to picture to you, as we go through the passage, we would be using the parent-child relationship here, because this is what is being portrayed here in the letter of Paul as far as the church in Philippians is concerned. So he was addressing them as his children, spiritual children. He called them my beloved. And then it continued, just as you have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence. And this is what he said, work out your salvation. Now, let me clarify something before we continue discussing, okay? I want to clarify something on this statement, work out your salvation. Next slide, please. Click it, please. I want us to see this because we might misinterpret the text. There are some Bible readers that misinterpret this. Paul said, work out your salvation. He did not say work for your salvation. I want you to take note of the preposition out and for. There's a big difference between the two. Because once you say work for your salvation, there is a sense of earning. You gotta do something so that you earn salvation. And then that is wrong, okay? That's not what Paul is trying to convey here to his children. But he used the preposition out, work out your salvation, meaning to say they already received the salvation in their lives, and because it's there in them, they got to work it out. They got to work it out as they would progress in life, as they would develop in a spiritual aspect of life, and as they are transformed by the Spirit of God towards Christ likeness. So Paul, as a parent, as a spiritual parent of the Philippian church or believers, he was looking forward that the members of the church would become Christ-like. This is the picture that he had in mind. That they would respond to things on the way that Jesus Christ would respond to things. That they would respond to criticisms the way Jesus responded to criticisms. That they would respond to sufferings the way Jesus Christ responded to sufferings. That they would treat other people the way Jesus Christ treated other people. Are you following the point? So this is the picture that Paul had in mind. I asked, if I'm going to ask you, what is the picture that you have for your children? You have a picture in your mind, right? And Paul was having that as a picture in his mind in the future, and right now they are still in the present. Christ-likeness is the picture in the future, and they are working out in the present. Because the reality is this: you and I lived our lives in a very crooked way after the fall. That is why when you look at the book of, even in the book of Genesis, during the Tower of Babel period, and the Bible is very clear telling each one of them live according to how they desired. And so as when you reach in the book of Judges, it's the same thing. Every person live according to how he desired, according to his own judgment. And when we rely on our own judgment, it's problematic because we are crooked. That is why I observe this. There are no parents around that would teach their children to disobey. Have you seen a parent teaching their children to disobey? None. What do we teach? We teach them to obey. But why many of them disobey? Have you noticed that reality? We do not teach our children to disobey. We teach them to obey. But why do many of them disobey? Because the nature is there. The crooked nature is there. And you don't need to teach it because it's there inside them. And if you won't be very intentional on this, even you yourself, you would realize that you are inclined to do something that is wrong, something that is foolish. Are you following the point? So, if that is the case, as spiritual children also, God desires to see us living a Christ-like life in the future, and yet that future has not happened yet. We are still there at the present. And because we are still at the present, we got to work it out. We've got to work it out every day until transformation would gradually take place in our lives. Tingnan mo yung katabi mo. Mukhang mabait, no? Pero hindi lahat ng aspect ng life ng taong yan, kabaitan. Meron niyang konting ganun eh. That's reality. But God is not finished with that person yet. Because in the mind of God, there is a picture of a Christ-like life in the future. And He continues to work in that person's life. Why? Because He loves you. Okay? Even if you are still imperfect today, God's perfect love keeps on loving you, so that as you journey towards perfection, Christ-likeness, you would really be transformed day by day. What do you do? If you are a parent, this is your desired picture. What do you do in this time? Definitely, you lead your children so that the road that they would follow would help them accomplish that picture. That's why parents today would tell their children, please don't come home very late at night. It's dangerous. And children would say, you're so killjoy. But you just don't understand. They have a picture in their mind for you. That's why they implement these rules. No girlfriend yet, no boyfriend yet. Killjoy ka naman, ma at pa. Parang hindi ka dumaan nito. But why are they doing that? Because they have a picture in their mind for you. Okay? They're teaching you things, values, principles in life. Why? Because they have a picture there. And they want you to be there. This is what it means when you say work out. You as a person na tinuturuan, you gotta work it out. Because it's not natural for you to follow that what is good. As I have mentioned, we are inclined to doing what is foolish. So you gotta work it out. There is a sense of intentionality so that that picture in mind for the future would be accomplished. For example, as a Christian, as a believer, what is it that you struggle with today? I believe you still have struggles. There are struggles in the past that are still clinging with you and you are clinging onto it. For example, the lust of the flesh is still there. And if it is still there, it's still a struggle for you because you are saved, you got to work it out. You got to work out your salvation in this matter so that that sin, that flesh, that power of the flesh in your life would be dealt with. And you work it out with dependence on the Lord because after all, it's God who gives you the opportunity to overcome those things. That is why when we continue in the passage, let's look back at the passage when it is revealed in the whole thing. Okay, it says there, verse 13, "For it is God who is at work in you, both to will and to work for His good pleasure." So this is the picture about you. This is how God sees you. And here you are in the present, and God provides things for you so that as you journey with Him, you would see how He's going to work in you, to will and to work. Not just to have the determination to do it, but He's going to help you in really doing it. The Spirit of God is in you. That is why before, when you are not a believer yet, the Spirit of God is not there in you. And when sin comes in and when sin confronts you, your tendency is just to give in. I'll just do it. Anyway, everybody does it. Okay lang yun. But now you became a Christian, the Spirit is there in you, and sin confronts you this time. There's a sense of something that is not good in your heart. When there is a sin in front of you and you're about to do it, you sense that it's not good. You sense that something is wrong here. And you're not going to do it. Why? Because the Spirit of God is influencing your heart. So after sensing that, you make a decision, no, I'm not going to do this because this is a mistake. And the Spirit of God would continue to help you to really do what you decided to do. I said this a few months ago already. There are 10 frogs on the log. 9 decided to jump. How many are left? There are 10 frogs on the log. 9 decided to jump. How many are left? Some said 1. Some said 10 in the previous, confronting of that question. And then many of you said 10. Why? They just decided. They did not jump yet. Okay? They just decided, which we call it's the potentiality. They are in the potential of jumping, but not yet in the actuality. It's not an actual jumping yet. So now, you have this problem, and the Spirit of God convicts you, and now that you're convicted, you would say, I would stop this sin. That's potentiality. But until you really stop that sin in your life, it is then that it becomes actual only when you start doing it, when you start implementing what you decide to do. So if you decide, I won't be lazy for this year because I want to accomplish great things for the Lord, I won't stop myself from sharing the gospel, that's potentiality. But until you begin sharing the gospel to another person, that's actuality already. So in the same sense, when God is at work in us, He works in our will, and He works in our lives so that we would really do it in the actual sense. And when we begin doing that on a day-to-day basis, God convicts our will, we cooperate with Him, and we work it out with our own strength also by the revelation and help of God through His Word. We work it out, we won't do it, we decide we will not do it. Then we develop into Christ-like every day, until the full picture that God desires for us would happen in your life. Kaya nga, ang maganda lang, as I have observed, God acknowledged that this is not a magic. That this is not something that when you put your faith in Jesus, poof, it's going to happen to you. There are things parts in your life that you need to work out, that you need to develop so that the picture that you have in mind would really be fulfilled. Kung gusto kong maging muscular talaga na puno ng muscles, yun yung picture ko sa mind. I put it here. But right now, dito ako sa present, ang ginagawa ko, palay ang lamon ko. Will it bring me to that picture? No, definitely not. Except na lang kung magja-jogging ako, mag-workout ako, I'll go to the gym, and then, those are the things that would lead me in the path, and then that would bring me to this picture. So, as far as God is concerned, just as like how Paul desires for spiritual children, He has the picture for them, a Christ-like life. That is why they're living in the present. He is reminding them, do and obey while I am away, not only when I am with you. Because you got to work out your salvation. This is intentional. Living your life as saved individuals. Diba? There are many of us whom the Lord has invited, come on, sail with me on this boat. And then when we are about to leave the pier, many jump on the sea and then lumangoy lang, sumusunod sa boat. But actually, the invitation is, come, ride on me with the boat. And many of us, even if we're saved already, we're still living our lives as unsaved. And this is a change of mindset today because God is inviting all of us. I have paid the price for you. I love you, and my love pays the price for you. That's why right now, I want to see a life straightened. I want to see your life straightened because God's love straightens the crooked. In the future, this future may not happen when you are still alive that I'm talking about. Because nobody who reached the level of perfection, Christ-like life, when he's still alive. But at least, it's the desire of God that every day, even if we don't reach that perfection while we are living, we are heading towards that direction. Because every day, we experience a transformation that is caused to us by the very presence of Christ in our lives. It's the presence of Christ that makes the difference. Let me close this sermon with this illustration. I already related to this to you, I think last year or the other year. There's an old lady. She lives in a house by herself. The house was dirty because she was old already. She didn't like to clean anymore. And one day she went down to her garden and saw a beautiful flower. And so she took the flower, brought it inside the house, and put it on the vase. While the flower was there on the vase, she looked at the beauty of the flower. It's so nice. But he stepped back and he saw that the vase was dirty. And he said, it's inappropriate. The vase is not appropriate to have the flower because the flower is so nice and the vase is so dirty. So she said, let me clean the vase. So she cleaned the vase. Hinugasan niya, and it turned out to be a very shiny one. So now, she placed back the flower there, and it looks so good. So she stepped back, and from a distance, she looked at the flower again. It's so nice. It looks good with a clean vase. But notice that the table was dirty. She said, this table is inappropriate for the flower and the vase, so I will clean this table. So she cleaned the table. When it's clean already, she put back the flower and then the vase. It was so nice. She went to the kitchen. From there, she looked at the living room and said, the flower is nice, the vase is clean, the table is presentable, but the whole living room is a mess. I'll get a broom. She got a broom, cleaned it, swept the floor, wiped it, and it turned out to be very clean living room already. So she stepped back again, looked from a distance, she looked at the flower, it was so nice, on a very clean vase, a very presentable table, in a very organized, orderly living room. She went to her kitchen. She was about to take her lunch, but she realized that the kitchen is really dirty. So after taking lunch, she cleaned the kitchen. And then the rest of the house were cleaned. How did it happen? Only because of the flower. Only because of the flower that she brought into her house. My friends, through the grace of God, Jesus is there in your life. Let the presence of Christ cleanse us from all unrighteousness, not only sins in the past, but even in the present condition. Because when He came into our lives, He positioned us to be cleansed on a day-to-day basis so that we could be transformed into Christ-like in the future. This is the picture that He has for you and me. His love is so amazing. His love is so real in each one's life that when He is there, when His love is there, He would really straighten the crooked. He will clean the dirt. He would remove the unnecessary things in your life so that you could become more and more like Jesus. This is my prayer, that this very picture in the mind of God could happen in every person here in Zikaek, and that this would transform not only your very life, but your family and the community that God has placed you in. God bless you, and good morning.